Ducklings, and I'll be reading to you today Make Way for Ducklings by Robert McCloskey. Who are you going to send this to?
Whoever. Grandma.
Blah, blah. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were looking for a place to live, but every time Mr. Mallard saw what looked like a nice place, Mrs. Mallard said it was no good. There was sure to be foxes in the woods or turtles in the water, and she was not going to raise a family where there might be foxes or turtles. So they flew on and on. Can you believe that? Where are we going to send this to? I am not sure. Hey, the public garden. When they got to Boston, they left to. They felt too tired to fly any further. There was a nice pond in the public garden with a little island in it. On it, the very place to stop to spend the night, quacked Mr. Mallard. So down they flapped. And when the end of the story, can you still do it until I say end? Can you stop it until I say end? The next morning, they fished for their breakfast in the mud at the bottom of the pond, but they didn't find much. Just as they were getting ready to start on their way, a strange, enormous bird came by. It was pushing a boat full of people. And there was a man sitting on his back. "Good morning," quacked Mr. Mallard, being polite. The big bird was too proud to answer. But the people on the boat threw peanuts into water. So the Mallards followed them all around the pond and got another breakfast better than the first.
I didn't even have to work for it.
Did I skip a page, Mom?
I don't know.
I did.
Good call.
I like this place. I like this place, said Mrs. Mallard, as they climbed out onto the bank and waddled along. Why don't we build a nest and raise the ducklings right in this pond? There are no foxes, no turtles. said Mr. Mallard, delighted that at last Mrs. Mallard had found a place that suited her, but look out! Look out! Look out! Squawked Mrs. Mallard. All over thither. You'll get run over. Way back. Way back. Way back. Way back. And when she got her breath, she added, "This is no place for babies with all those horrid things rushing about. We'll have to look somewhere else." They looked in Lobbersting Square, but there,
Lewisburg?
Lewisburg Square, but there was no water to swim in. Then they flew over the Charles River. "This is better," quacked Mrs. Mallard. "That island looks like a nice, quiet place. And it's only a little way from the public garden." "Yes," said Mrs. Mallard, remembering the peanuts. "That looks like just the right place to hatch ducklings." So they chose a cozy spot among the bushes near the water, settled down to build her nest, and only just in time, for now they were beginning to molt. I can see, Riley. All their old wing feathers started to drop out, and they would not be able to fly again until the new ones grew in. But of course they could swim, and one day they swam over to the park on the riverbank, and there they met a policeman called Michael. Michael fed them peanuts. And after that, the mallards called on Michael every day. One, two, three, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I know. After Mrs. Mallard had laid 8 eggs in the nest, she couldn't go to visit Michael anymore because she had to sit on her eggs to keep them warm. She moved off the nest only to get a drink of water, or to have her lunch, or to count her eggs to make sure they were all there. day, the ducklings hatched out. First came Jack, then Cack, then Lack, then Mack, then Knack, then Awkack, then Pack, then Quack. Mr. and Mrs. Mallard were bursting with pride. It was a great responsibility, taking care of so many ducklings, and kept them very busy.
I see. They look busy.
One day, Mr. Mallard decided he'd like to take a trip to see what the rest of the river was like. Further on. So off he set. I'll meet you in a week at the public garden. He quacked over his shoulder. Take good care of the ducklings. Don't you worry. Don't you worry, said Mrs. Mallard. I know all about bringing up children. And she did. That's quack. She taught them how to swim and dive. Boo, 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 boo. Hey, that looks like some protein. She taught them how to walk on line, to come when they were called, and keep a safe defense from bikes, scooters, or other things with wheels, like cars.
Safe distance. Is it distance?
It was distance.
Oh, it was. Oh.
When at last she felt perfectly settled with them, she said one morning, Come along, children, follow me. Before you could wink an eyelash, Jack, clack, clack, mack, peck, lick, pack, and quack. And Quack, which was looking the other way, fell into line, just as they had been taught. Mrs. Mallard led the way to the water, and they swam behind her to the opposite bank. Water break.
Okay. Pause, and we'll continue with part 2.